He looked like the character Beaker from the Muppets. The caller presumed that Keyes was there to buy drugs. She stated that Keyes seemed a little odd and commented that he wanted to purchase her flowers for her last day. Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be reading 10 encounters that people have had with serial killer Israel Keyes while I enjoy some breakfast cereal. This first encounter was phoned in from Nia Bay, Washington. The complainant said that they knew Israel Keyes from working for the Mocha tribe and has been following the media stories about Keyes ever since his arrest for the murder of the Barista in Alaska. This person said that they never had any concerns about Keyes and that they enjoyed working with him. He did say, however, that his wife had concerns about Keyes and had a bad vibe about him. He explained that Keyes had come down from Alaska for a visit and was at a party at an unnamed person's house. During the party, they were sitting around the fire drinking, and Keyes and this person's wife got into a discussion about a rabbit. During this conversation, Keyes had apparently made a strange expression towards his wife, resulting in the bad vibe that she has since felt about him. The man described a number of practical jokes that they played on Keyes and that he played on his co-workers. He described Keyes as being good-natured about these jokes, and it appeared that Keyes enjoyed his job and his co-workers. He had never been boating with Keyes, but was familiar with his 16-foot Bayliner boat. He believed that the engine ran when Keyes got the boat. However, it needed a lot of fixing up, and this person recalled that Keyes had reupholstered the entire boat and put in new carpeting. He did not recall where Keyes bought the new carpeting from. The complainant had no information on when Keyes made the cement anchors for the boat. He did recall that shortly after being hired by the tribe, Keyes worked on a large project at the farmer's market and had made some columns out of cement. He recalled that an unnamed person had helped Keyes on this project and noted that they may have additional information for agents. The complainant had no information on any caches that Keyes may have hidden in the area. He noted that Keyes often worked alone and had built some brick outhouses near some of the area trailheads, to include the Shishi and Cape Flattery trailheads. The complainant noted that Keyes had done a small home construction project for him and his wife. He could not recall the exact time frame, but stated that he would check with his wife and provide the dates at a later time. This next complaint comes from a woman who said that in the fall of 1998, she worked as a sales representative for Abbott Laboratories. She reported that she traveled in the company car throughout the Massachusetts area. She said that while driving through Franklin, Massachusetts on Route 495 North one evening, she noticed a clean-cut man standing next to a plain white van on the shoulder of the road. The man flagged her down, motioning her to pull over. She continued to the next exit and pulled into the parking lot. The man in the white van pulled in behind her and exited the vehicle. The man stated that there had been fire coming out of the tailpipe of her company car, which she thought was odd because the car had just been serviced. He offered to follow her home to ensure she arrived safely. She was feeling uneasy and told the man that the station where she had the vehicle serviced was just up the road. The man again offered to follow her home since it was late. She refused the offer and returned to her vehicle. The man returned to the van but was unable to start the vehicle. He approached her for help. The man asked her to get in the van and turn the key when he signaled her to do so. The man made several attempts to get her to enter the van, which she refused. She did notice that the rear of the van was caged just behind the driver's seat. The complainant did attempt to file a report with the Walpole Police Department at the time, but was told that they could not do much because she did not get a license plate number. She stated that while watching the recently aired Keyes interviews, she became convinced that the man in the white van was Keyes. She reported that the man's physical appearance and voice was a match for Keyes. In this next encounter, the complainant said that he had seen Israel Keyes at Cluny Lake on Fort Richardson on February 19, 2011. The complainant was ice fishing with his wife and son. He noticed that Keyes had a kind of underwater camera with him. He asked Keyes if that was a fish finder. Keyes told this person it allowed him to see how deep the lake was. The complainant was noticing that Keyes was digging holes and not fishing. Keyes kept moving around a lot. The complainant also noticed that Keyes was drilling holes much quicker than anyone. What was taking the regular person 15 minutes to drill, Keyes was doing in a little more than 2 minutes. Keyes was stronger than he looked. The complainant went over to talk to Keyes again because he had drilled a lot of holes but had not done any fishing. Keyes mentioned to the complainant that he had been at Matanuska Lake in Palmer, Alaska just the other day and there were only small fish there. The complainant said that if the camera had not been found, that Keyes may have just rented it from one of the shops in town. He also said that to get to Cluny Lake, you either had to have a pass on your car that allowed you to drive onto the base, or you had to go to the visitor center and sign in. This next complaint is another stalking one. This complainant said that sometime in 1998 she was shopping at Marshall's clothing store in Albany, New York. She said that the store was closing and she was one of the last people to leave the store. She claims that her car was located in a dark area of the parking lot. And while she was placing items into her car, she was approached by a younger man who looked to be in his late teens to early 20s. She stated that at first the man just stared at her and watched her placing items into her vehicle, but she felt it was odd that he was standing near her in the middle of an empty parking lot and that he looked very tense. She claims that after a few minutes of watching her, the man asked, "How old are you?" She replied, "How old do you think I am?" She said that at the time she was in her 40s and she had replied in an agitated voice because she felt it was a rude question. The complainant claims that the man seemed to relax and then he turned and walked away. She claims that this man that approached her looked identical to Keyes with short hair. She stated that after watching the videos on the FBI.gov website that she recognized his voice and that she is certain that the younger man was Keyes. In the final pre-assessment finding, the complainant said that she lives in Albany, New York and is an attorney for the State Department of Health. She remembered the incident she called about as an out-of-the-ordinary, strange thing. There was no snow on the ground. One evening she went to the strip mall to go to the store Marshall's. She parked further away from the store, closer to the road. She left the store around 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. and it was dark outside. She had purchased a larger picture at the store and was placing it in her car when she noticed a man on the other side of the car staring at her. He was wearing a thin, dorky cotton shirt. He looked like the character Beaker from the Muppets. She saw excerpts of interviews of Israel Keyes and they upset her because Keyes was so familiar to her. She googled his name and it looked like the guy that approached her in the parking lot. His mannerisms reminded her of the man as well. This next complainant comes from Sequim, Washington. They reported that in the fall of 2010, she went hiking at Shishi Beach with her husband. They recalled when they got back to the trailhead, there were two guys talking at the information board. One of them, whom they later learned was Keyes. This person and her husband were soaked from the rain, so they changed their clothes at the restrooms located at the trailhead. A few minutes later, when they left the parking area, they saw Keyes walking down the road and offered him a ride. When he said his name was Israel, the name stuck with them. The complainant said that he was pleasant and told them that he was kayaking down the coast and that he had kayaked across Admiralty Inlet. Admiralty Inlet is notorious for waves, so they assumed he must be a really good kayaker. Neither the complainant or her husband actually saw a kayak. They recalled the season as fall, possibly between late September and mid-October, but before Thanksgiving. This next encounter comes from a caller who wishes to remain anonymous. A male caller wishing to remain anonymous phoned from a halfway house in Anchorage to report seeing the Keyes construction truck 6 or 7 times in the parking lot of the IHOP and Dairy Queen on Tudor in January 2012. The caller and his now ex-girlfriend would go to the IHOP or Dairy Queen parking lot to meet a drug dealer. On approximately 6 times, he would also see the Keyes construction truck in the parking lot or already meeting with the drug dealer that they were there to meet. On 2 occasions, he saw Keyes in his truck speaking out the window to the dealer who was sitting in his truck. The caller presumed that Keyes was there to buy drugs. The caller is afraid of parole violations if he provides his name or his girlfriend's name. He is also unwilling to provide the name of the dealer because he's afraid what would happen if his name was linked to the FBI. He says he would be shark bait. Probably not wrong about that. The caller said that the dealer sold both marijuana and other harder drugs. The dealer was a white guy well connected to a gang. The dealer drives a large black black Ford F-160 truck. At the end of the call, the caller stated that he would think about calling me back with the dealer's name. This next encounter kind of piggybacks off of the one that I just read, and it might even be from the same caller, but I'm not sure. He had phoned in before with information and was previously in a halfway house. The caller states he is now in jail for credit card theft and may wish to trade more info for help on his case. He will probably call tomorrow. The caller stated that he knew Samantha Keys. I don't know if he meant Koenig or if this is a typo, but the caller stated that he knew Samantha Keys was no choir girl and had done heroin in the past. Israel Keys had purchased dope from a drug dealer named, they blocked his name out of course, a white man who lived in Eagle River, Alaska. The caller said that this person is a dangerous man who's selling dope that people are dying from. He doesn't say this, but it's probably because it's cut with fentanyl. Like 95% of what's in this particular complaint form is secondary information, but what is interesting is this one line here. Israel Keys had purchased dope from a drug dealer who lives in Eagle River, Alaska. So we already know that Israel Keys had experimented with drugs, coke, he smoked weed, he drank a lot, and taken LSD and mushrooms. But this is the first time that I, at least, am hearing of him possibly taking heroin. This next complaint is in the form of an email and reads as follows. I had a possible run-in with Israel Keys out on the peninsula of Washington in late 2001 or 2002. A note about this particular encounter is that this comes from a woman who was interviewed for the Dark Minds documentary about Israel Keys. I paused at the Shell station in Clallam Bay to fill my gas tank at around 9 at night. There was a man in a truck who was parked in the strip mall there, and nobody else was around. I don't remember any details about the truck, but I want to say that it was a mid-sized truck, like an F-150 size, maybe a little bigger. When I left, I was surprised to see him pull out onto Highway 112 behind me. At the junction of 112 and 113, I kept on 112 and headed east. He took the same route. For the next 40 miles. He would pass me when he could and then slow down in front of me, very slow, to about 5 miles per hour, and then look in his rearview mirror at me. He stopped several times in our lane and I was forced to pass him. The final time he pulled in front of me, he got out of the truck and stood beside the driver's side door and looked back at me. I remember he was notably tall, above 6 feet, below 6'3", I'd say, and he was slender to average build, but I don't remember his face. It was very dark and rainy and cold. He raised his hand as if to wave me to stop, and I drove past him, though he stepped toward my car. He did not seem drunk, didn't drive erratically aside from trying to get me to stop, and when he got out he seemed sure-footed. He followed me for another several miles but didn't try to pass again. He got close enough that I could not see headlights any longer. I raised my cell phone and illuminated it, waved it in the window so he could see I had a phone. I had no service, but I pretended to make a call. We reached a pull-out right before Highway 101 intersects with 112, just west of Fort Angeles. He pulled over to the north side of the road, turned around, and headed back west toward Clallam Bay. I did not get the license plate number as I was extremely shaken and had no pen or paper on hand without having to take my eyes off of whatever he was doing. I checked my vehicle in Fort Angeles for anything wrong with it. There was nothing legitimate to flag me over for that had anything to do with my car malfunctioning. I didn't call the police because I figured they'd just discount it as a drunk or laugh at me for being paranoid or something. At the time, I would have been 19 or 20, an average-built female who is 5'5". Between 2000 and early 2003, I lived part-time in Seiku and spent a lot of time between Nia Bay and Lake Ozette hiking. Again, I hope that somehow this information is useful in some way. This next complainant is from Spokane, Washington, and said that in September of 2003, Israel Keys helped her build a porch for her home. She said that Keys also did some kitchen work for her neighbor across the street. She says that she believes Keys went by the name Israel Sworn and lived about 5 or 6 blocks away from her home. She remembers Keys having a woman and blocked out living with him. She still owns the home in Spokane, Washington, and has all of the receipts from the contract work Keyes did, along with a check she wrote to him for his work. She says she can also show us where Keyes lived at the time he stayed in Spokane. She states when Keyes left the area in fall of 2003, he mentioned he was moving to the northeast coast of the United States. She thought he did good work and charged a fair price. The complainant said that her husband noticed Keyes' photo in the Boise newspaper. She also said that Keyes made her husband uncomfortable, especially around their kids. This last complaint comes from a woman who said that she had known Israel Keyes in 2003 and 2004. She stated that in 2003 until August of 2004, she worked at the Blue Star Espresso stand in Sequim, Washington, where Keyes was a regular customer. She stated that Keyes often was driving a truck with a flatbed that towed a backhoe and had his dog Zeke with him. During their conversations, Keyes mentioned that he did contracting work. His home base was in Nia Bay. He did some work at the Elwha Reservation and spoke of his dog and his father, who he would sometimes buy a mocha for, as well as his own. Keyes never mentioned a woman or a child to her. When the complainant needed assistance with her carpets, Keyes recommended an unnamed person who told the complainant that he knew Keyes from Burnt Hill, where Keyes would go to shoot guns. In the summer of 2004, the complainant said that she saw Keyes digging a hole on Carlsberg Road. The complainant quit working at the Blue Star Espresso stand in August of 2004 to attend massage therapy school. On her last day, she stated that Keyes seemed a little odd and commented that he wanted to purchase her flowers for her last day. Aww. After leaving her employment at the espresso stand, she only saw Keyes once more in December of 2004 at the Home Depot in Sequim, Washington, where she stated he was purchasing cement and boards. The complainant got to know Keyes because he had a cool Australian cattle dog named Zeke. Keyes always ordered a grande mocha, which cost $3 or $4, and he would always pay with a $5 and leave the rest as tip. Keyes told the complainant that he helped his dad with construction, and he sometimes brought his dad with him for coffee. If Israel was with his father, it would have had to be before his father passed away, which was November of 2002, if I recall correctly. Or maybe Israel was just hanging out with a random old dude and telling people that that was his dad. Who knows with this guy? The complainant does not have contact information for, I'm assuming, Keyes' friend. The complainant has not seen him in a long time and thinks he may have moved out of the area. This person told the complainant that he and Keyes were friends and that Keyes had given him odds and ends jobs. He said they used to shoot a lot up at Burnt Mountain and Keyes was an excellent marksman. He said something about never wanting to make Keyes mad because he thought Keyes could go crazy on you. Perfect timing. This was fucking delicious. So there you have it, 10 encounters with Israel Keyes, or 10 more if you watch the video I uploaded just before this, 30 encounters with Israel Keyes. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Victoria Evans. Stay safe out there.